Every minute across the country, someone is hurt by the person they trust most. A husband, a wife, a partner. Behind closed doors, love can turn into something unrecognizable. This story begins like so many others. Two people drawn together by chance and charm. They built a life, shared a bed, promised forever. To their neighbors, they looked content. To their families, they looked strong. To each other, they looked enough like love to keep going. But even the strongest looking homes can be hollow. She came home late. She was already asleep. The house was quiet, still, the kind of stillness that feels almost too complete. That's when he noticed something strange, a door that was never open. A door that always stayed shut. It stood ajar as if inviting him. It wasn't curiosity that made him walk toward it. It was something else. A tension he hadn't fully noticed until that moment. A question that had lived in the back of his mind for months, but never had the nerve to ask. What was she hiding? He stepped through that door and took the stairs down one by one into a space he hadn't entered in weeks. The basement. Her basement. The one she insisted on keeping to herself. He would never be the same after what he saw. The truth didn't come with a warning. It didn't come with flashing signs. It waited quietly in the dark beneath the floorboards of their life until it was found. And when he turned around to confront her, she didn't hesitate. 7 times she struck him. Not once, not twice. 7. This is the story of a woman who kept more than just a secret, and a man who opened the wrong door. It started with trust. It ended with blood, and everything in between was hidden beneath the house they called home. Their names were Daniel and Rebecca, married for 11 years. From the outside, they had what most people want. Stability, a 2-story home in a quiet cul-de-sac, matching cars in the driveway, smiles in photographs, even when no one was asking them to smile. They met through friends, one of those setups that no one expects to work, and yet something stuck. Rebecca was warm, thoughtful, always with the right words at the right time. Daniel was patient, easygoing, content with the simple things. Their courtship wasn't dramatic, no whirlwind, just consistent, steady, safe. The kind of love people envy because it doesn't burn too fast. They were both in their 30s when they married. It was a modest wedding, mostly family, a few friends, and vows that were written with care. And not too flowery, just enough to feel real. Daniel worked in IT, Rebecca stayed home. That's how she preferred it. She called herself a homemaker. She kept the house spotless, paid the bills, scheduled the repairs. She said it gave her peace. And Daniel didn't question it. Why would he? He had never been with someone so devoted. She made coffee every morning, folded his clothes the way his mother used to, left him notes in his lunchbox. Even after a decade, there were no fights, not real ones. The kind of bickering that exists in every home, yes, but nothing that would make a man wonder who he was sleeping beside. Nothing that would suggest anything was wrong. People who knew them spoke with admiration. They really balance each other out. One friend once said, "She's a bit of a perfectionist. He's more laid back." It worked. But behind every perfect balance is a weight that's uneven. Something someone is carrying more of. And in this house, that someone was Daniel, because over the years, he began to notice patterns, subtle things. Rebecca's increasing need for control, the way she would shut down conversations if they got too personal, the basement door that she started locking, the packages that arrived without a return address, the hours she spent downstairs, sometimes entire afternoons. She told him she was organizing things, that she needed space, that it helped her feel centered. Daniel accepted that. He trusted her. And trust, when given freely, is easy to betray. He asked once, early on, what she was working on. She smiled and said, "Just old projects." He never asked again. Sometimes peace in a marriage doesn't come from understanding. It comes from avoiding what doesn't feel right to question. They had no children. Not by choice, Rebecca would say. She told people she couldn't have them. Daniel never corrected her. Maybe he didn't know for sure. Maybe he didn't ask. The years passed quietly. Holidays, anniversaries, birthdays documented with smiling photos and polite dinners. And beneath it all, something else. Something he didn't see clearly until the day that door was left open. But long before that moment, the signs were already there. Small, gentle, camouflaged inside comfort. That's how secrets survive. Not through force, but through routine. Daniel didn't know it then, but every kind gesture, every perfect day, every carefully prepared meal, it was all part of the same pattern, the same control, the same silence. And the silence, was getting heavier. It was a Tuesday. Daniel came home early. No warning, no call ahead. Just a decision to leave work before rush hour. He parked in the driveway, walked through the front door, and noticed the silence. No footsteps above, no soft hum from the kitchen. No Rebecca. The house felt still. He called her name. Once, twice, no answer. He checked the living room, the bedroom. Nothing. Then he saw it. The basement door, unlocked, open, just slightly. It was the first time in years he'd seen it like that. Part of him wanted to turn away, to close it, wait for her to come back upstairs, and pretend he hadn't noticed. But something inside him had stopped waiting. Something in him needed to know. He stepped toward the door, slowly, carefully, as if it might react. The stairs groaned under his weight. Dust floated in the air. The basement light was on, but dim, yellowed, flickering at the edges. The air was heavier down there, thick, cool. At first, he saw what he expected: shelves, plastic bins, a small folding table. But then his eyes adjusted, and he saw more. There were notebooks stacked in piles, dozens of them, bound tight with string, labeled in handwriting that didn't look like Rebecca's. There were folders, medical records, photos, some blacked out with permanent marker, all of them tucked into boxes with names he didn't recognize. And then there were the jars. Small glass jars, lined neatly on a shelf, each with a label, each filled with something. He didn't look too closely. Not at first, because his eyes had landed on something else. A wall covered in newspaper clippings, articles, stories about women, missing persons, accidents, suicides, all pinned in order, underlined, annotated. Some of the dates went back years, long before he met her. He moved closer. Names began to repeat. And then he saw it. A photograph, not of a stranger, not of a victim, but of himself. Pinned to the center, surrounded by dates, notes, circled phrases. His full name, his workplace, his habits, his mother's address. There was even a note beside it, written in her handwriting. It read, "Not yet." He didn't hear her come down the stairs. He didn't see her until he turned around. She was standing there, calm, expressionless, holding something in her hand, something small, sharp, familiar. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She stepped forward, and then the first strike came. The first stab didn't register as pain. Not immediately. It was shot cold, sharp, followed by a sudden heat. Daniel staggered backward, clutching at his side. His eyes met hers, but she didn't look afraid, or angry, or even present. She looked detached, like she was completing a task, like she was following steps. The second strike came faster, to his shoulder. He fell against the table, scattering papers, jars crashing to the floor. Blood smeared across the concrete as he tried to push himself away. She didn't speak. She didn't scream. She just kept moving. The third stab hit his back as he tried to crawl toward the stairs. The fourth, his arm raised in defense. The fifth, his leg. The sixth, lower, close to his ribs. And the seventh went deep, right below the collarbone. And then she stopped. Just like that. No breathing heavy. No tremble in her hand. Just silence. She stood over him, watching, as if she was waiting for something. A signal. An outcome. Daniel lay on the floor, bleeding, heart pounding in his ears. And still, she didn't speak. What happens in the mind of someone capable of such violence? What switches off or on? Maybe it wasn't rage. Maybe it wasn't panic. Maybe this wasn't a sudden act at all. Maybe it had always been building, planned, measured. Maybe not yet had finally become now. And still she didn't run. She didn't check if he was alive. She didn't call for help. Instead, Rebecca walked upstairs quietly, closed the basement door behind her, and left him there, in the cold, with the clippings, the jars, the secrets, bleeding but alive. For the next 4 hours, no one came. No neighbor heard the struggle. No friend stopped by. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness, time stretching and folding into itself. What he remembered most wasn't the pain. It was the look in her eyes, empty, as if she didn't know him, as if she never had. When help finally arrived, it wasn't because of her. It was a delivery driver dropping off a package. The front door had been left open. The driver called out. No one answered, but the smell of blood, metallic and thick, had already reached the hallway. Police were called. Paramedics rushed in. Rebecca was gone. Daniel was barely alive. And the basement told a story no one was ready to hear. When the paramedics arrived, they found Daniel unconscious, barely clinging to life. His body was covered in blood, some dried, some still pooling beneath him. The stab wounds were deep, intentional, each one placed to immobilize, not to kill quickly. They stabilized him at the scene, rushed him to the nearest hospital. Multiple transfusions, emergency surgery. For days, no one was sure if he would survive. But Daniel was still fighting. Back at the house, the police began their search. They moved room by room until they opened the basement door. And what they saw inside changed everything. It wasn't just strange. It wasn't just disturbing. It was structured, deliberate, methodical. The wall of newspaper clippings wasn't random. It formed a pattern. All the articles were connected: cases of women gone missing, accidental deaths, disappearances that were never solved. There were annotations written in tight, frantic handwriting. Circles, arrows, theories. Each folder on the table held documents. Some real, others forged. Birth certificates, death reports, police logs. All altered, all touched by her hand. And then, there were the jars. Dozens of them. The contents unidentifiable at first glance. Labeled with initials, dates, codes. Some were empty, others sealed, airtight. Investigators sent them to labs. What they discovered later would disturb even the most seasoned officers. But that would come in time. For now, one thing was clear. Rebecca hadn't just snapped. This wasn't the act of a woman pushed past her limits. This was the culmination of years. Maybe longer. She had vanished without a trace. No witnesses. No signs of forced exit. Her phone was left on the nightstand. Her car still in the driveway. But she was gone. Neighbors were questioned. None recalled hearing anything. One remembered seeing her at the mailbox that morning. Calm, pleasant, waving as usual. The police issued a bulletin. Her photos spread across local news, then national, but her trail was already cold. Meanwhile, Daniel regained consciousness. He couldn't speak right away, tubes in his throat, IVs in his arms, but his eyes were alert. A nurse asked him his name. He blinked once for yes. She asked if he knew who did this. He blinked again. And then he wept. Not from the pain, not from the trauma, but from the realization that the woman he had loved, trusted, built a life with, had never truly existed. As investigators dug into Rebecca's past, what they found was unsettling. Gaps in her identity, mismatched records, a marriage certificate from another state, with a different last name. There had been another man, years ago, a similar story, a quiet woman, no family, vanished without explanation. He was never heard from again. And now the pattern was repeating. But this time there was a survivor. And the trail, however faint, it was there. The hunt for Rebecca had begun. As investigators began pulling at the threads Rebecca left behind, they discovered they weren't following a single line, but a web. The name Rebecca Hale, the woman Daniel had married, lived with, loved, was real. But only recently. Before that, it was Rebecca Myers. And before that, another name entirely. Each tied to a different town, a different man, a different story. None of them ended cleanly. One ex-partner disappeared without explanation in Arizona. Another died in what was ruled an accident in Maine. A fall down a flight of stairs, though no one had ever confirmed her presence there. And in Georgia, there was an unresolved case involving a woman matching her description connected to a house fire that claimed 2 lives. Each time she moved, changed states, changed names, started over. Each time, she got better at hiding. For years, no one had noticed. There was never enough evidence to tie the cases together. The trail was scattered, and the name was always different. But now, they had the basement, and what they found inside began to take shape. The jars, once analyzed, revealed traces of biological material. Teeth fragments, pieces of hair, tissue, bone, some human, some animal. The labeled initials, none of them matched anyone Rebecca knew in her current life, but a few matched names from those past places. People who had vanished quietly, people never looked for again. The notebooks were full of patterns, timelines, observations, all written in small, obsessive handwriting. She had studied people, tracked them, watched them disappear. It wasn't random. It was controlled. Some entries described the right time. Others listed emotional triggers, trust thresholds, Vulnerabilities. One passage read, "He trusts me. He's not ready yet." But soon, at the center of it all was Daniel. His file was thicker, more detailed, personal, his habits, his weaknesses, his hopes, his fears. And then there was the note on the final page, "Sever the tie, leave no trace." It didn't explain everything, but it said enough. What kind of person builds a life just to destroy it? What compulsion drives someone to replicate the same cycle over and over? New identity, new home, new partner, and then vanish. Was it control? Was it some perverse idea of creation and destruction? Or was it something even darker? No clear motive emerged. No manifesto, no confession, just fragments, cold, unfeeling, precise. Rebecca didn't just live a lie, she perfected it. She became exactly what each man wanted, until she decided they had served their purpose. And now she was gone. Again, but this time the world was watching. She vanished without a trace. No airport footage, no vehicle sightings, no credit card activity, no digital footprint. The woman once known as Rebecca Hale, if that was ever her real name, stepped out of that neighborhood and into the shadows. And the world hasn't seen her since. Law enforcement followed every lead. Buses, motels, shelters, hospitals. They reached out to state lines, then to federal databases. Facial recognition, alias searches, passport alerts, nothing. She was gone. Some believe she never intended to disappear, that she had it all planned months in advance, a different identity, waiting, documents forged, a place already chosen. Others believe she had help, that someone out there, perhaps someone just like her, helped her vanish. Or worse, that this was never her first time. That the woman Daniel married was just one version of a long, winding pattern. Different names, different faces, all carefully constructed, all abandoned, once the truth came too close. And if that's true, then maybe she's already started again. Somewhere else, a new town, a new partner, a new basement. Daniel survived, but what he carries is not visible. His wounds stitched and healed left scars, but not as deep as the ones left inside his mind. He says he doesn't fear knives anymore. He fears kindness, smiles, trust, because she gave him all three and used them like weapons. Investigators still keep the case open. Occasionally they check anonymous tips, cold trails, dead-end calls, but most of them believe she's gone for good. Outsmarted them, evaporated into the fabric of ordinary life. And yet, when you look closely, her story leaves a trail behind. A trail of questions that don't go away. Who was she really? How long had she been living like this? And what exactly was she hiding in that basement? Before Daniel found out, we may never know. But there's one question that lingers long after the case files close. If the person you trust most turned out to be someone else entirely, would you even realize it until it was too late? If you think you would, think again. Because some people don't wear masks, they're the mask. And by the time it slips, you're already trapped. If this story disturbed you, shocked you, or made you think twice about the people we let into our lives, hit the like button. Leave a comment below with your theory about where Rebecca could be now. Subscribe to Crime Vault for more real-life horror stories that will keep you awake long after the screen goes dark. Because truth is far scarier than fiction.